The cliffs of Veloria stretched endlessly into the gray horizon, their jagged edges cutting sharply against the restless sea below. Lady Seraphine stood at the edge, her long black hair whipping around her face in the cold wind. The storm was coming, the sky dark and heavy with clouds, and yet her heart felt heavier. She had been summoned to the grand council of her people, summoned to accept a marriage she did not want, a marriage that would bind her to a human. Humans, fragile, mortal, fleeting beings. The thought alone made her skin prickle. She had seen them, studied them from afar, and always found them unpredictable. Weak, yes, but dangerously clever in their own small ways. Now she was being asked, ordered rather, to marry one of them. Not for love, of course, but to strengthen the shaky alliance between her kind and theirs. Prince Kalen. She did not know much about him, except that he was human, young, and supposed to be brave. Brave humans were dangerous. Brave humans with hearts untested by immortal schemes were even more so. Seraphine's family believed this union would secure peace, but she had learned long ago not to trust their plans. She had learned that family often spoke in riddles, using duty as chains to control the unwilling. She turned from the cliffs as the wind tore at her gown, flowing black as midnight. Her reflection in the polished obsidian walls of the castle stared back at her, pale skin, sharp features, eyes like molten silver, and an aura of danger that had kept even the boldest suitors at bay for centuries. Centuries. She was older than kingdoms, older than the tallest towers in her land. And yet today she felt a strange shiver of fear. The human prince arrived at dusk. His horse trotted lightly through the castle gates, the soft sound of hooves echoing in the courtyard. Kalen's eyes were steady when he dismounted, calm yet alert. Unlike other humans who had crossed her path, he did not avert his gaze in fear or awe. There was curiosity in his stance, a quiet courage that drew her attention despite herself. He bowed deeply as etiquette demanded, but there was a warmth in the gesture, a kind of respect she had rarely received. "Lady Seraphine," he said, his voice clear, smooth, and honest. "It is an honor to meet you. I hope I may be worthy of your acquaintance." Most humans would cower at her presence, stumble over words, or flatter her with insincere praise. But he did not. That small difference made her uneasy. "You may be," she said carefully, her tone measured, distant. "But this is no game of worthiness, Prince Kalen. This is duty." He nodded, seeming to understand that she would not be swayed by charm or flattery. "Then I shall do my best, Lady Seraphine, to honor duty and to honor you." Humans could not be trusted, not truly, and yet here he was, standing before her with honesty in his eyes. The first days were tense. The Grand Council watched them, murmuring among themselves as the immortal and the human passed beneath their gaze. Seraphine's sisters whispered warnings about human frailty. Her father reminded her of duty, yet Kalen did not flinch, did not bow to fear. He walked beside her as an equal, spoke to her with patience, and asked questions that mattered. Not about her power, not about her age, but about her thoughts, her feelings, her fears. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, Seraphine walked the castle gardens, her mind heavy with conflicting emotions. Kalen had joined her, walking silently beside her, his eyes on the dying light of the sky. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming flowers, and the shadows of ancient statues stretched long across the marble paths. "You seem troubled," he said softly, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, gentle, and entirely human in its simplicity. "I do not claim to understand the ways of your world, Lady Seraphine, but I want to." "You are mortal." They carried no hidden agenda. For the first time, she felt the fragile stirrings of trust. And yet fear remained, sharp, insistent. What if she allowed herself to care for him and the world demanded she break him? What if her own kind or her own family turned against him or against her? That night, Seraphine stood alone in her chamber, staring at the silver moon spilling light across her walls. Her fingers traced the carved edges of the balcony railing, and she thought of the human prince. Kalen had a softness she had never seen in centuries of immortality, a patience that did not falter, even when faced with her coldness. And yet, the shadow of doubt lingered. Suddenly, a whisper of movement behind her made her turn. A shadow slipped across the floor, a figure she had trusted for centuries. Her personal attendant, a fellow vampire named Leora, bowed low. "My lady," Leora said, her voice trembling slightly, "you must know there are forces at work, forces that would not see this union succeed. Prince Kalen is not safe. Only you, only your choice and your protection, can shield him from its shadow." She had taken lives, made enemies, witnessed kingdoms fall, but now a single human's fate rested in her hands. The first thread of responsibility tangled with a strange, dangerous thought. She felt her heart, so long dormant, begin to respond, not to duty, not to fear, but to him. Prince Kalan, the human who treated her with respect, with care, with a gentle courage she had never known. And in that moment, standing in the moonlight, Seraphine made a silent vow. She would protect him. She would guard him from the curse, from the shadows, from even herself if she had to. Because for the first time in centuries, she wanted something beyond power, beyond duty. She wanted trust. She wanted connection. She wanted love. But the night was long and the storm had yet to break. As she turned back to her bedchamber, a strange chill ran through the corridors. The shadows seemed to watch, to wait, forcing her to remember that in Veloria, nothing came without price. And sometimes, the price was greater than even immortality could bear. Cliffhanger hook. As the first drop of rain tapped against the balcony, Seraphine realized something she had not expected. Her own family had hidden the curse's truth for a reason. And now, if she was to save Kalan, she would have to confront secrets older than the kingdom itself. Secrets that might destroy everything she had ever known. Including herself, the castle walls were silent in the early hours of the morning, except for the occasional rustle of wind through the empty corridors. Lady Seraphine sat at her window, watching the moonlight ripple across the stone courtyard below. The revelation of the hidden curse weighed heavily on her. She had never feared for a human life before. She had never wanted to protect anyone with her whole being. Yet here she was, heart and mind consumed by thoughts of Prince Kalan. He was waiting for her in the garden, as he often did in the quiet moments before the court awoke. The gardens were alive with shadows that stretched long beneath the ancient statues, their stone faces frozen in silent witness. Flowers, pale and luminous in the moonlight, bent as if listening to their conversations. Seraphine's heart stirred at the sight of him. He looked serene, almost unaware of the danger that hovered around them like a hidden storm. "Good evening, Lady Seraphine," Kalan greeted, his voice calm and warm. "I thought you might need some company." Even now he did not tremble in fear of her, nor did he question her power. He treated her as a person, not a being to be feared or adored, and that more than anything unsettled her. "You are foolish," she said softly, stepping into the garden. "This is no time for wandering, not with the danger you do not understand." She had faced armies, treacherous councils, and centuries of political scheming, yet one human, standing there in simple clothes and bare honesty, made her heart feel fragile and alive at once. They walked in silence for a while, the soft sounds of night surrounding them. The trees whispered secrets in the wind, and the flowers seemed to lean toward them, as if aware of the tension between the immortal and the human. "Tell me," Kalan said finally, breaking the quiet, "why do you fear me?" "Because," she began slowly, "you are human. You do not understand the world I live in. You do not know the dangers you face, nor the darkness I have endured. Your life is fragile. You could be destroyed, and it would be my fault. I do not fear what I cannot change, and I do not fear you, Seraphine. What I fear is losing the chance to be brave when it matters." And yet here was a human, showing her something she had long forgotten, that true strength could be gentle, that courage could be measured in small, persistent acts of care and honesty. "You are unlike any human I have ever met," she admitted softly, almost to herself. "And you are unlike any being I have ever met," he replied, eyes sincere. "I do not want to fight your world or change you. I only wish to walk beside you, if you allow it." Seraphine introduced Kalan to the quiet corners of her castle, the libraries filled with dusty tomes, the hidden passageways lined with centuries of history, and the moonlit balconies where the wind sang of distant lands. He asked questions, simple and thoughtful, and she found herself answering with honesty she had never offered another being. It was in these small moments that the bond between them began to grow. She began to notice the way he moved with care, how he observed the details others overlooked, how he listened as if every word she spoke was precious. She began to trust him, not only with her words but with the secrets of her heart. Yet fear never left her entirely. She knew of the curse that lingered in the shadows, waiting for a misstep, for a moment of weakness. The knowledge gnawed at her, making her cautious, making her test him, even as she longed to draw closer. She would speak harshly, push him away, only to see him return with patience and unwavering devotion. One evening, as they walked beneath the silver glow of the moon, Seraphine stopped abruptly. A statue of an ancient queen, her eyes carved with cold perfection, loomed above them. "You see this?" Seraphine asked, her voice low. "This was once a ruler who trusted too easily." She was betrayed by those closest to her, and the kingdom suffered. How could he, a mortal, see so clearly what centuries of life had taught her in shadows and blood? She felt the stirrings of admiration, of something more, but she pushed it aside. Duty and fear were stronger than curiosity. The following days brought whispers from the court. Some nobles opposed the union, others watched with quiet suspicion. Seraphine sensed the tension in the air, the way shadows seemed to linger longer in corners, the way the wind carried secrets she could not always hear. She knew she had to remain vigilant, both for herself and for Kaylan. Then, one night, an urgent message arrived from her attendant, Leora. A traitor within the court had discovered the secret of the curse. If left unchecked, it could endanger Kaylan's life before the union was formalized. Seraphine's pulse quickened. She had long avoided confrontations that required her to reveal her true power, but this was no longer a choice. She found Kaylan in the library, reading by the soft light of enchanted lanterns. His expression lifted as she entered, a quiet smile on his lips. "Seraphine," he said, "you seem troubled." "That is not a small thing." The night stretched on as they planned their next steps. Shadows crept along the walls, but within the library there was a small circle of warmth and trust. Seraphine realized that the more she allowed herself to care, the more she felt alive. The human beside her was teaching her something she had thought lost to time. That connection, patience, and kindness could be stronger than fear and suspicion. Yet the world outside the castle walls was not so forgiving. The traitor moved silently, plotting to use the curse as leverage, and Seraphine knew that one mistake could spell disaster. She could feel the tension in the air, a current of danger beneath the calm of the night. Every glance, every step, every word between her and Kaylan carried the weight of potential disaster. As dawn approached, the first light of morning spilling pale gold across the horizon, Seraphine and Kaylan stood together on the castle balcony. The wind carried the scent of distant seas and blooming flowers. They looked out over the land, aware that their bond had grown in strength, yet understanding that the challenges ahead were only beginning. Seraphine turned to him, silver eyes reflecting the first light of day. "I will protect you," she whispered, the words carrying centuries of promise and fear. "No matter what comes." Cliffhanger hook. As the sun rose, illuminating the castle towers in golden light, Seraphine sensed a dark presence moving unseen among the walls. The curse, the traitor, or perhaps something older and darker, it did not matter. Danger was coming. And for the first time, she realized that her feelings for Kaylan had made the stakes far higher than she had ever imagined. They were bound together now, not just by duty, but by something far more fragile and powerful: trust, hope, and the beginnings of love. The wind had shifted, carrying with it a chill that felt older than the castle itself. Lady Seraphine moved quietly through the halls of Veloria, her long black gown brushing the polished stone floors. Shadows clung to the corners, shifting as if alive. The curse she had tried to contain was stirring. She could feel it in the air, a presence that waited, patient, and relentless. And now more than ever, she realized that protecting Prince Kaylan would test not just her strength, but her very heart. Kaylan was in the garden again, waiting where the moonlight touched the fountain. Seraphine paused for a moment at the doorway, watching him. He was studying the water, the way it reflected the stars above, serene and thoughtful. She felt a pang of tenderness she could not name. Despite the danger, despite the threat of the curse and the treachery within her court, she wanted to be near him. "You should not wander alone," she said softly as she stepped forward. "I am never truly alone," he replied, glancing up at her. "Not when you are near." "You do not understand the danger," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "There are forces here that would see you harmed, even destroyed. A single mistake, a single misstep. And I trust myself to stand by you, even when the world turns against us." Whispers in the castle halls spoke of a shadowy figure moving among the servants, of letters stolen and messages altered. Seraphine's attendants moved nervously, afraid of the curse and of those who might exploit it. Every corner of the castle seemed to hide eyes and ears, and every sound became a potential threat. Seraphine and Kaylan devised a plan to uncover the traitor. Together, they moved through secret passages, ancient libraries, and moonlit balconies, piecing together the threads of deceit. Kaylan's perspective, sharp in its simplicity and honesty, often saw things Seraphine missed. He pointed out patterns, inconsistencies, and subtle clues with patience, never criticizing her centuries of experience but adding to it with human insight. "See here," he said one evening, pointing to a faded mark on a parchment in the royal archives. This symbol repeats across the notes you received. It's subtle but consistent. Someone wants you to miss it, to overlook it. Her admiration for him grew, but so did her fear. Each discovery brought them closer to the truth, but also closer to danger. Their nights became filled with quiet conversations, shared in hidden corners of the castle. They spoke of dreams and fears, of the lives they had lived and the lives they hoped to create. Kaelan told her of his childhood, of simple joys and small acts of bravery. Seraphine, in turn, shared glimpses of her immortal existence, the loneliness of centuries, the weight of responsibility, and the curse that now threatened him. "I fear for you," she confessed one night, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. "Not just because of the curse, but because I have come to care for you. More than I thought possible." Could she risk her heart, knowing the danger that stalked them, knowing the secrets that lingered in shadows? Yet his touch, his honesty, and his courage made the choice feel both terrifying and inevitable. Then the inevitable moment came. The curse manifested, not in a loud or violent way, but quietly, insidiously. One evening, as they walked through the castle gardens, a shadow detached itself from the corner of the stone wall. It moved with silent intent, curling around the fountain, approaching Kaelan. Seraphine sensed it immediately, the air growing heavy and cold. "Stay behind me," she commanded, stepping forward, her presence a shield of power and light. The shadow recoiled, hissing like wind through dead leaves, but it pressed forward, testing her resolve. Kaelan did not move, did not falter. "I am not afraid," he said firmly, his hand brushing hers. "I trust you." She extended her will, a soft silver glow emanating from her form, pushing back the darkness. The curse, ancient and relentless, shrieked in frustration, but she held firm. "You are stronger than I imagined," Kaelan said, awe in his voice. "And I am grateful, but strength alone is not why I trust you. It is because I know your heart." The shadow began to dissipate, retreating into the corners from which it came, leaving the night calm once more. She looked at him, her heart trembling. The human who had been deemed fragile had proven that courage was not measured in years or power, but in the willingness to stand firm, to face fear, and to trust. For the first time, Seraphine understood the depth of her feelings. She realized that she had already crossed a line she could not retreat from. She could not deny the pull of her heart, nor could she ignore the courage that Kaelan embodied. The bond between them had grown beyond duty, beyond curiosity. It had become something fragile, dangerous, and beautiful, trust and the beginnings of love. The following days were filled with preparation and vigilance. They moved carefully through the castle, aware that enemies lurked in corners, that whispers carried intent, and that the curse's shadow could strike at any moment. Yet in the quiet moments, when they could walk together under moonlight or share words in hidden libraries, they found solace in each other's presence. "We cannot let fear rule us," Kaelan said one night as they watched the stars reflected in the still waters of the fountain. "The curse, the shadows, the traitors, they do not control our hearts. Only we do. Even when I try to hide it from myself." Every whisper, every shadow, every threat became a test, not of their power, but of their bond. And with every test, the bond grew stronger, rooted in trust, hope, and the fragile beginnings of love. But even as they stood together, the night carried a warning. From the darkness of the castle corridors, a figure watched, silent and patient. The curse, the treachery, and the shadows of centuries had not yet been fully revealed. They were bound together now, their hearts intertwined, but the true trial, the one that would test their courage, their trust, and their love, was yet to come. Cliffhanger hook. As the first rays of dawn crept over the castle walls, Seraphine felt the presence of something older, darker, and more relentless than any traitor or curse. It was waiting, watching. And it knew that the bond between her and Kaelan was the key to something far greater, something that could change their world forever. The first light of dawn spilled over the towers of Veloria, casting long, golden beams across the stone walls. Lady Seraphine stood on the highest balcony, her black gown fluttering like a shadow against the rising sun. The storm from the previous night had passed, leaving the air crisp and filled with the scent of wet earth and blooming flowers. Yet beneath the calm, a tension lingered, a presence older, darker, and more relentless than anything she had faced before. Prince Kaelan joined her silently, his hand brushing hers in a small, reassuring gesture. "It is beautiful," he said softly, eyes tracing the horizon, "but I sense you are not at peace." "It is my heart." But now, standing beside this human who had earned her trust and touched her heart, she felt something extraordinary, courage born not of fearlessness, but of love. The first signs of the final trial appeared as the air grew colder, shadows curling like living tendrils around the castle. The dark presence that had lingered for months manifested in a shape both fluid and terrifying, a being of whispered fears, an embodiment of the ancient curse. Its eyes glowed with a dim, cruel light, and its form shifted as if it were the night itself given motion. Seraphine stepped forward, extending her will, a soft silver glow emanating from her form. "You will not harm him," she commanded, her voice steady, yet laced with centuries of authority. "I will protect him." "You are stronger than I imagined," he said calmly, "but it is not just strength that defeats darkness. It is trust. It is love." Courage was measured in the willingness to stand, to trust, and to act even when all seemed lost. Together they confronted the shadow. Seraphine's light clashed with its darkness, creating a storm of energy that shimmered across the castle walls. The being shrieked and twisted, seeking to separate them to exploit their bond. But Kaelan's hand remained in hers, steady and unyielding. His trust fueled her power, giving her strength she had never known she could possess. "You cannot break us," he said, his voice echoing in the night. "Our hearts are bound by more than fear or curse. We choose this bond. We choose each other." With a final surge of will, she extended her energy outward, intertwining with the trust and love Kaelan had offered her. The shadow wailed, twisting, shrinking, and finally dissipating into nothingness. The curse, ancient and relentless, was broken, not through force, but through the bond they had nurtured, the courage they had shown, and the choice to trust one another completely. The night lifted, replaced by a sky turning soft and gold with the rising sun. Seraphine felt her chest lighten, the centuries of fear and isolation melting in the warmth of morning and the presence of the human beside her. Kaelan squeezed her hand gently, a quiet smile on his lips. "You were never alone," he said softly. "Not now, not ever." She had faced countless trials, conquered armies, navigated court intrigues, and endured betrayal. Yet this moment, this simple human courage, this shared trust, was more powerful than anything she had ever wielded. She leaned toward him, her heart opening fully for the first time in centuries. "I feared you at first," she whispered, voice trembling. "I feared your humanity, your mortality. But I was wrong. You are brave, stronger than any immortal I have known, and you have taught me to feel, to trust, to hope. The heart, that is where true power lies." The court, once skeptical and suspicious, observed their union with quiet awe. The nobles who had doubted the strength of a human beside an immortal could see now that courage was not measured in years or power, but in loyalty, compassion, and unwavering support. Seraphine's people learned to respect not only her choice, but the humanity and bravery of Kaelan. As the day progressed, the castle felt lighter, as if centuries of shadows had been lifted. Seraphine and Kaelan walked together through the halls, the sunlight spilling through stained glass, casting colors across their path. The gardens, once haunted by whispers of fear, bloomed anew under the warmth of their combined presence. "This is only the beginning," Seraphine said softly, her gaze on him. "Our bond is stronger now, but the world will continue to test us. There will always be challenges, danger, and shadows." For centuries, she had walked alone, believing that attachment was weakness and vulnerability a trap. Now she understood that true strength came from opening one's heart, from trusting another, and from facing the darkness not as a solitary force, but as a united one. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the castle and the surrounding lands in a soft, golden light, Seraphine and Kaelan stood on the balcony together. Their fingers intertwined, their hearts bound not by duty alone, but by choice, trust, and the beginnings of love that had weathered storms, curses, and centuries of fear. The shadows that lingered in corners and corridors had been defeated, but their vigilance remained. Yet fear no longer ruled her heart. She had learned that courage and love were stronger than any curse, stronger than any shadow, and that even a mortal and an immortal could create something enduring together. And in that moment, as they watched the dawn stretch across the horizon, Seraphine understood that the greatest trials were not those of power or magic or politics. They were the trials of the heart. And the heart, when it chooses trust and courage, can conquer even the darkest shadows. The bond between them was unbreakable now, forged through trials, strengthened by shared courage and tempered by love. The kingdom of Veloria, once steeped in suspicion and fear, had witnessed a new kind of power, one born not from immortality or magic, but from trust, understanding, and the quiet, extraordinary bravery of the human heart. Final emotional cliff. Seraphine looked at Kaelan, her heart full, yet aware that the world would continue to test them. But for the first time in centuries, she did not fear. She had chosen not only to protect him, but to embrace the vulnerability that came with love. And in that choice, she found her redemption, her courage, and the promise of a future where even immortals could learn the quiet, enduring power of the human heart.